attacking me!
911, what's your emergency?
Oh my God, there's dogs attacking someone on Maple Drive. It's Helen Carver, they're killing her.
Stay on the line, ma'am. Can you describe the dogs?
Pit bulls, 2 of them, big ones. They're on her, she's screaming. Oh God, there's so much blood. Please, hurry.
Target neutralized.
This was the chilling reality that unfolded on October 14, 2024, in what had always seemed like a quiet, safe Ohio neighborhood. It was the day 73-year-old Helen Carver, a beloved grandmother and devoted gardener, met an end so brutal it defied belief right in her own backyard. Her attackers weren't predators from some far-off wilderness. They were her neighbor's prized pit bull's dogs that until then had been part of the suburban scenery. What happened that afternoon would tear away the illusion of safety, revealing a disturbing story of negligence, ignored warnings, and a discovery so shocking it would make national headlines. Toxicology reports later confirmed the dogs had cocaine in their systems. Helen Carver was by every account the embodiment of warmth and gentleness. With soft eyes that seemed to smile even before her lips did, and a calm that put others instantly at ease, she carried the quiet strength of a generation that knew hardship but chose kindness. She found joy in simple treasures, her family, her close-knit street, and above all, her garden. Each spring, her backyard erupted into a riot of color, every flower placed with care, every stem tended with devotion. She could recite the Latin names of her blooms, revive a drooping rose with nothing but patience and skill, and lose herself in the hum of bees and the rustle of leaves. Her husband, Robert, 75, had been her steadfast partner for over 50 years. But Robert's health had been fading for some time. Advanced dementia had left him wheelchair-bound and quiet, confined mostly to the view from their modest single-story home. Helen, his sole caregiver, began each day with tender rituals, making his breakfast, checking his comfort, before stepping outside to the one place that still felt entirely her own. But their sanctuary bordered trouble. The Millers, their neighbors, owned 2 pit bulls, powerful, restless animals that had already made more than a few neighbors uneasy. This wasn't a sudden danger. It had been brewing for months. The dogs were often seen pacing their yard muscles tense, barking with a deep guttural menace that carried down the block. Local animal control logs revealed at least 3 prior complaints in the past year, one involving a jogger chased until they vaulted a fence, another where a smaller leash dog was cornered and nearly mauled. They were always getting out, recalled Sarah Jenkins, 2 houses down, and there was something in their eyes like they were always on edge. Helen, an animal lover, but no fool, had confided to her daughter Mary Beth that she hated working near the shared fence. Mom said they just had a mean streak, Mary Beth remembered on through tears. She worried most for Robert, knowing he couldn't protect himself. The Homeowners Association had issued warnings to the Millers, one memo, bluntly threatening removal of the dogs after any further aggression. But nothing changed. The Millers brushed off concerns with casual dismissals. They're just playing, or they wouldn't hurt a fly. The neighborhood began to feel like it was living beside a loaded gun. Then came October 14th. The air was crisp, the trees aflame with reds and golds, a light breeze scattering leaves across manicured lawns. Helen was outside in her gardening clothes, wide-brimmed hat shading her from the sun, bent over late-blooming marigolds, the earth cool and damp in her hands. Robert was inside, likely watching one of his beloved nature programs. Around 2:30 that afternoon, the clock hit 0. The Millers' pit bulls had gotten out again. No one knows whether it was a carelessly latched gate, a dugout gap beneath the fence, or rotting wood finally splintering away. What is known is that they came fast, 2 muscular shapes bursting into Helen's yard without so much as a bark to warn her. It came without warning, just a sudden bone-jarring impact that ripped through the calm of the autumn afternoon. One pit bull, then the other, exploded through the garden like unleashed missiles. 73-year-old Helen Carver had only a heartbeat to register a blur of muscle and teeth before they were on her. Her first cry was a sharp, startled gasp, but it was swallowed instantly by the guttural roar of the dogs, deep, resonant growls that vibrated in her chest. Their claws ripped into her arms as they slammed her backward into her marigolds, snapping stems, crushing petals, scattering her trowel, and pruning shears into the dirt. The scent of damp earth mixed instantly with the coppery tang of blood. They didn't bark. They snarled, lips curled so far back their gums gleamed, saliva spraying as their jaws clamped down. The sound was wet and brutal, the crunch of fabric tearing the sickening thud of bone against teeth. Helen thrashed, kicking wildly, her voice cracking into high, panicked pleas. "Help! Somebody! Please, help me!" Her breath came in ragged bursts between the animal's snapping bites. Inside the house, Robert heard the chaos. Helen's voice, sharp and frightened, tangled with a sound he didn't understand at first, the relentless, rhythmic whump of bodies slamming into the ground, the furious growls like rolling thunder. His mind, muddled by dementia, fought to make sense of it. He gripped his wheelchair rims, straining toward the door, but his body refused to obey. He could only stare through the window, his wife's horror framed like a nightmare he could not touch. Across the street, Clara Hansen had just closed her mailbox when the first scream shattered the air. She froze mid-step, the sound of snarling carrying to her ears, raw animal unrestrained. She looked up and her blood went cold. Helen was on the ground, two powerful shapes lunging and biting in a frenzy, their tails' stiff eyes blazing with unblinking focus. "Oh my God," Clara gasped, her voice pitching upward. Her hands shook so violently she nearly dropped her phone. She could hear the ripping fabric flesh and the desperate grunts of someone trying to breathe through pain. Into the 911 line, she choked out, "They're eating her. The dogs are eating her. There's blood everywhere. Please send someone." "They won't stop," from his garage. Michael Chen heard the screams first, then the unmistakable pop of snapping jaws, like wet wood breaking, and the rapid, heavy panting of animals in high drive. He grabbed a shovel, sprinted toward the noise, but froze when the scene came into view. The dogs were locked in their bodies, moving in violent jerks as they tore at her, oblivious to his presence. One shook its head violently, a spray of red spattering the flowers in the fence. Michael took a step forward, the shovel slick in his palms, but the sight in front of him was too primal, too dangerous. Without protective gear, stepping in would mean his own death. He retreated, dialing 911 with urgent precision. "Send armed officers now, they're killing her." The minutes dragged like hours. The soundscape was pure terror, Helen's cries, weakening into hoarse sobs, the low grinding growls of the dogs, their claws scraping against the concrete path as they shifted positions, and the wet pull of teeth on flesh. When the sirens finally rose in the distance, her screams had already dropped into faint, gurgling gasps. And then there was silence. At 2:41 p.m., 8 minutes after Clara's first call, the police arrived. They found a garden turned into a killing ground. Uprooted plants, dirt churned into mud with blood, and Helen's body still brutally torn amid the wreckage. The pit bulls stood over hers, panting hard, their muzzles dripping red, their chests heaving a low rumble, still vibrating in their throats. A veteran officer later called it the most horrific thing he'd seen in 20 years. Body cam footage captured the tense, clipped voices. Subject unresponsive, dogs still active. "Secure the perimeter, these animals are still a threat." The dogs paced in tight circles, ears pinned back, eyes fixed on every movement. They couldn't wait for animal control. The risk of the dogs lunging again or breaking free was too high. "Contain and neutralize," came the order over the radio. 3 shots cracked like thunder. The bodies dropped instantly, the garden suddenly eerily quiet, except for the buzzing of flies and the faint rustle of leaves in the wind. Paramedics moved in, but the damage was irreversible. Helen Carver was pronounced dead on the scene, her injuries catastrophic, deep lacerations, crushed bones, massive blood loss. Even hardened medics struggled to hold their composure. Within hours, news crews swarmed Maple Drive. Then came the toxicology bombshell. Both pit bulls had cocaine in their systems. Outrage erupted. Neighbors who had once stayed silent now came forward, telling of near attacks, ignored warnings, and fear that had hung over the street like a storm cloud. The Millers were soon arrested, convicted of involuntary manslaughter, and sentenced to years in prison. The sheer savagery of the attack left no one doubting the raw, devastating power of the animals involved. In the days that followed, calls for tighter pit bull ownership laws and more rigorous regulations on dangerous breeds swept not only the state, but the entire country. Even national animal rights organizations, usually staunch defenders of all breeds, were forced into a difficult reckoning. Many acknowledge the undeniable physical capability of certain dogs, especially when poorly managed, while still fighting to avoid blanket breed bans. But the Helen Carver case was different. The toxicology reports the shocking presence of cocaine in both animals pushed the debate into uncharted territory. This was no longer just about temperament or training. It was about intentional neglect, reckless endangerment, and the disturbing possibility of deliberate enhancement of aggression. For Robert Carver, the aftermath was a quieter, more private tragedy. His dementia clouded the full scope of what had happened, but the void left by Helen's absence was a constant ache. He would roll his chair into the kitchen and call her name, or turn toward the garden window as if expecting to see her bent over the marigolds. His eyes would scan the empty rooms, puzzled and searching, unaware of the permanence of her absence. The Carver home, once warm with the smell of fresh-baked bread, the hum of gentle conversation, and the rustle of Helen's gardening gloves, now felt hollow. Outside, the marigolds that had been her pride slowly withered their golden petals, fading to brittle brown, mirroring the grief that settled over the street. Neighbors still spoke of her final day in hushed voices, the memory of those frantic screams lingering like a bruise that would never fade. Helen's death became more than a neighborhood nightmare. It was a blood-stained lesson etched into the community's memory. Love, compassion, and familiarity could never erase instinct, especially when instinct was fueled by negligence, and in this case, chemically altered rage. Her story underscored the urgent need for responsible ownership, for authorities to act decisively on reported dangers, and for communities to stop treating repeated warnings as background noise. The once beautiful garden where Helen had found solace now stood as a grim memorial, a place where the scent of roses and fresh soil had been replaced by the echoes of a woman's desperate fight for life. And so Helen Carver's name became a call to action, a reminder that the line between pet and predator is razor thin, that the dangers we dismiss can be the dangers that destroy us. Her death forces us to face the uncomfortable truth: responsibility is not optional, and ignoring it can shatter lives. Her memory demands we listen, act, and ensure that no other family is left to endure a tragedy that never should have happened. In the end, the tragedy of Helen Carver is more than a story of loss. It is a reminder carved in grief that animals, no matter how familiar, carry instincts older and stronger than our assumptions. Whether it's a dog in a backyard, a wolf in a sanctuary, or a wild predator in the open, their power demands our respect, our vigilance, and our responsibility. Protecting wildlife doesn't mean ignoring the danger. It means creating boundaries that keep both humans and animals safe. It means listening to warnings, strengthening laws, and acting before tragedy strikes. The most dangerous mistake we can make is assuming that love alone can tame nature's force. If Helen's story teaches us anything, it's this: safety is not cruelty, and prevention is the truest form of compassion for people and for the animals who live alongside us. If you believe in protecting both communities and wildlife through awareness and action, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Animal Reckoning, and share the story so no warning goes unheard again. Together, we can turn lessons like this into lasting change.